Hey folks, I'm back. I want to get right into it. Today we're going to talk about the arrest of Scotty Scheffler, the #1 rated golfer in the world. Even just hearing a golfer got arrested is kind of funny. It's like, what do? He wears khaki dress pants and a pink shirt. How dangerous can a golfer be? But pretty much every day since the arrest 2 weeks ago, something has come out or come to light to make the whole thing feel a little weirder than it did the day before. So I'm going to go through every weird thing that's happened chronologically, but we're going to spend the most time on what's happened recently, which there was a pre-arraignment hearing. The whole thing should have lasted maybe 35 seconds. All it was Scotty Scheffler's defense attorney wasn't present when the judge and the prosecutor scheduled the arraignment date. Normally, the judge gets both lawyers in the same room and they say, okay, let's coordinate everybody's calendar. Does this date for the arraignment work good for you? No, that date doesn't work. Okay, well, what about this date? That date works. Okay, great. What about you? Does that date for the arraignment work for you? It does? All right, perfect. That will be the arraignment date. It's in the schedule. I'll see everybody on that date. Scotty Scheffler's defense attorney couldn't be present during that little scheduling meeting because he was frantically trying to get Scotty out on bond so Scotty could play in the big golf tournament that he got arrested arriving to. So the only way, since he missed the original scheduling hearing, the only way to get everybody, the prosecutor and the judge, back in court so he could say, hey, listen, you know what, that date that you guys made for the arraignment doesn't work great for us. My client lives out of town. It doesn't work great for me. I'm not arguing that my client doesn't have to be here or that can appear remotely. I'm not arguing any of that. All we want to do is just bump the arraignment a week or so till June 3rd. That would work better for us. And since my calendar wasn't checked with, I think that's reasonable. You know, that's all. It wasn't a big case shaking motion by any means. And what's become the story really is the prosecutor in this just scheduling hearing, no big deal, should maybe take 2 minutes. The prosecutor, County Attorney Mike O'Connell, made a total fool of himself. I'm talking embarrassed himself, one for the books. I think the moment got to him. I think he thought, this is my big shot to make a name for myself. Golf is a global sport. Everybody's eyes is going to be on this case. It's time to show the whole world what kind of lawyer Mike O'Connell is. And he came to this little scheduling hearing. The arraignment hasn't even happened yet, with the energy of delivering a closing statement in a John Grisham novel. He was up there putting on a dramatic show. Your Honor, I don't make this objection lightly. I make this objection very seriously. Judge, I've been thinking all day how I could word this to you. It's like, Mike, whoa, O'Connell, what are you doing? The trial hasn't even started yet. This is simply to schedule the arraignment date. What are you talking about? At no point did Mike O'Connell make a point, let alone a good one, and even more cringe than doing the dramatic show and these long pauses and going on and on incoherently, is he put this strong defense for totally the wrong thing. Scotty Scheffler's defense attorney saying, yeah, we just want to move it to June 3rd. And then Mike O'Connell, the prosecutor, does this passionate, incoherent argument, and he brings in a Supreme Court case that Scotty Scheffler should not be able to appear remotely for the arraignment. And both the judge and the defense attorney just keep interrupting him and going, whoa, we're not saying that he wants to appear remotely. He will be here. We just need the date pushed off a little bit. And then Mike O'Connell will go, and that's what I'm arguing against. And they go, okay, well then make your argument. And then he just launches back into, if you look, the Supreme Court has said that they can only appear remotely when it's appropriate. And they're going, O'Connell, no one is saying anything about appearing remotely. What is the matter with you? And he goes, I know that. That's what I'm addressing right now. And they're like, okay, well, I guess keep going. And he going, and if you look, the Supreme Court says you can only appear remotely. And the judge is going, you guys are arguing about different things. And all of a sudden, what was supposed to be a 30-second scheduling hearing, where 9 times out of 10 the prosecutors would say, it's totally fine with us to push the arraignment back for 2 weeks. Even strategy-wise, a lot of prosecutors, I think, would say, this isn't a time to make my big fight. This is a time to keep the judge on my side, to be easygoing. All right, the arraignment was supposed to be tomorrow, and instead it's a week and a half later. Who cares? But Mike O'Connell, I think that morning, the whole moment got to him, and he really, truly made a fool of himself in front of the whole world. But let's go back and talk about all the bizarre little things that have happened on the way to the hilarious pre-arraignment hearing where Mike O'Connell embarrassed himself. So Scotty Scheffler shows up to the golf course at 6 in the morning. It's still dark. It's raining. You don't become the best golfer in the world by showing up late, right? And everybody directing traffic, the police officers, there was a bunch of people working the event that are directing traffic, getting people in and out. Everybody is on edge because, unrelated to this case, a guy working the tournament was struck and killed by a shuttle bus a little bit before this whole thing happened. So you got to think everybody that's out there directing traffic and working the big golf tournament is like, oh my God, that guy was such a nice guy. He was a pillar in the golf community in this town. He was hit and killed by a shuttle bus. Oh my gosh. And so understandably, everybody directing traffic and working the event is on edge. And when I heard that someone directing traffic was hit and killed by a shuttle bus, it didn't surprise me. The only PGA professional golf event I've ever been to was like 25 years ago. My dad and I went to the Sprint International in Denver. And I remember parking and getting into the course was a total shit show. We parked in like overflow lot J, and then we were like, so how do we get to the course? Where is the course from here? And they were like, okay, so you're going to want to take a short walk on the side of a busy highway, short 19-minute walk, and then you're going to get to overflow lot Q. At that point, you're going to wait for the shuttle bus. It comes every 3 days, so you're going to want to build a shelter and a fire. And once you do finally get on the shuttle bus, that's where things get really complicated. And if you think about it, like a football stadium or a baseball stadium, at least in theory, a lot of thought goes in. All right, how do we get all of these people in, parked, and out with the least nightmare possible? But these golf courses, I don't think they really, as much thought is like, how does this handle a massive event goes into them as like a big stadium? So I think it can just turn into a real disaster quick. So this guy tragically gets hit and killed by a shuttle bus, so everybody is on edge. And Scotty Scheffler shows up at 6 in the morning. I'm sure he's thinking, all right, I'm going to go hit some balls. Got to do a little warm up, my chipping, or I don't know what these professional golfers do before, but he's probably got to warm up. So he's getting there. Traffic is a disaster because the dude got killed. They're probably routing it in all different ways. And the arresting officer, Detective Gillis, claims that Scotty Scheffler pulls up. It's a total traffic jam disaster. He says he told Scotty Scheffler, gave him an order, you go this way. According to the arresting officer, Scotty Scheffler disregarded that order and started to go the other way. At that point, the arresting officer attached himself to Scotty Scheffler's car. He said that he was dragged to the ground where his pants got ruined, and then Scotty Scheffler kept going, and he then ran over, punched the windshield of Scotty Scheffler's car extremely hard, and then at that point, Scotty Scheffler stopped. They got him out, they arrested him, and brought him to jail. The official report from the arresting officer. This is like the second half of it. Detective Gillis says, subject refused to comply and accelerated forward, dragging Detective Gillis to the ground. Detective Gillis suffered pain, swelling, and abrasions to his left wrist and knee. He was transported to the hospital for further medical treatment by emergency medical personnel. Detective Gillis's uniformed pants, valued at approximately $80, were damaged beyond repair. So his pants got ruined. Oh my God. And so that sounds pretty dramatic. And the charges that came from that for the number one golfer in the world that showed up to get his putting warmed up, showed up early, were assault on a police officer. That's real bad. Criminal mischief, third degree. That's also really bad. Reckless driving and disregard signals from officer directing traffic. So it's like, all right, so the number one, let me get this straight. The number one golfer in the world assaulted a police officer while showing up to the golf course for the big tournament day. That right there even is a crazy headline to see. Assault on a police officer, that's bad. And then it's like, all right, so this big dragging to the ground, pants ruining that warranted this assault on a police officer, that's real jail time. So is there like body cam of that? What, this whole thing kind of rides on Detective Gillis saying like this was really bad. And then it comes out that the Louisville Police Department, it's a policy to have the body cam on. So when there's situations like this where people are going, wow, that sounds really bad. So let's see the footage of this big, wrist spraining, knee bumping, pants ruining police assault. Uh-oh. Then the next day it comes out that Detective Gillis forgot to turn his body cam on, and it missed the big moment that resulted in the assault on a police officer charge for Scottie Scheffler. And then they had to do a press conference, and this is where it starts to get a little embarrassing for the Louisville Police Department. So they come out, and instead of saying, you know what, Detective Gillis he was on edge because a guy had just been killed by a shuttle bus, and everybody, it was a stressful situation. And, what happened, but because he went against policy and didn't have his body cam on, we're going to drop the assault on a police officer, and we're going to drop the criminal mischief, and we're going to keep reckless driving and disregarding a signal from an officer. That's kind of what I felt like they would do, but they almost doubled down and they said, these charges are what we're going with. We're going with assault on a police officer, even though Detective Gillis had a policy to turn on his body cam and he went against it. And then one of my favorite things in the world is hearing someone from a police department do a press conference where they talk about like doing an investigation into themselves. It's always a bunch of gobbledygook that says pretty much, our sergeant told him not to do it again. But this woman at a press conference said that he did go against policy, but he's been counseled by his supervisor and received corrective action for this policy violation. And the exact quote in the press conference is, she said, "This corrective action, which has been noted on a performance obstruction form, which is in line with our disciplinary and practices." I could listen to like a spokesperson from a police department talk about how like all of that endlessly. It's so funny to me. It always sounds like this. Our department has conducted a very thorough internal investigation of ourselves and bravely concluded that corrective action is appropriate, which will be sternly noted on an official performance form. All of this does fall firmly in line with our disciplinary and practices protocol, and therefore we conclude that this matter is officially concluded. Thank you. We will not be taking questions. It's just a bunch of, I used to do that when I worked a corporate job for 9 months. I would, if I like blew it or didn't get something done, I'd always say, yeah, I'm having a system issue and we should touch base at the end of the month. I would just say a bunch of nonsense. And it's like, all right, thank you. Click. Okay. So the big moment that these assault on a police officer charges are hanging on was missed because the arresting officer didn't go with policy and didn't have his body cam on. All right, well then a day or two after that, it comes out that this arresting officer, Detective Gillis, that forgot to put his body cam on and missed the big moment, also has a pretty bad disciplinary past. He's caused a bunch of accidents, didn't show up to court, and maybe the one that really I think is related to this case is there's one where he got into a high-speed chase when he didn't have authorization to actually pursue someone at high speeds and really go for it. It's got to meet certain criteria because it's extremely dangerous for everybody else on the road. The public, you're sitting there driving along and there's a high-speed chase. If you get hit and killed, that's horrible. And so it's really got to meet every criteria in order to get it. And it did not meet any of the criteria. He didn't call it in, and old Detective Gillis just got himself into a high-speed chase, which pretty much is just a road rage incident. He didn't have the disposition and the calm to say, okay, this person is running from me, but a felony wasn't committed. It doesn't check any of the boxes to make it appropriate to pursue him at high speed. I just have to back off. This isn't attached to my ego. I have to make the professional and safe decision for the public and just let the person go. So now that person doesn't feel like they have to go 100 miles an hour. I don't have to go 100 miles an hour behind them. It's the best thing for everybody involved. I got the license plate number. I'll just let him go. But I think that shows that this Detective Gillis has an ego issue, has a bit of a rage issue. And so that comes out. Got a little disciplinary past for old Detective Gillis. And then footage of the whole thing comes out. A couple different angles where, again, the whole I was dragged to the ground and my pants were ruined that the assault on a police officer hangs on coincidentally was not in the chunk of footage that was released. You get to see the whole thing, Detective Gillis running like a maniac, punching the windshield of Scotty Scheffler's car. And if you remember the police report, it's like he experienced pain and swelling on his wrist. It's like, well, he punched the car really hard. Maybe that is it. And so what made the whole thing feel a little bit weirder is, yeah, the big where I attached myself onto the car and then was dramatically dragged to the ground and I hurt my wrist and my pants were ruined. Yeah, you can't see that on the clips that have come out because it was behind the bus. So after watching that clip, maybe I'll throw it in here, but after watching that clip, what it looks like to me is I think Detective Gillis, who has a little bit of an ego issue, a little bit of a rage issue, unnecessarily, as he's telling Scotty Scheffler, go over there, go over, and either Scotty Scheffler was genuinely confused or just had the attitude of like, listen, pal, I'm the #1 golfer in the world. I know you think I'm just another person in the traffic jam, but I got to get in there and warm up my swing, pal. So either one, it just looks like Scotty Scheffler kind of just cruised forward, not a crazy assault on a police officer speed or anything, just cruise forward. But I think what it seems like at most, you can't see it, but maybe as Detective Gillis gives Scotty Scheffler, the orders, keep going that way. Scotty Scheffler goes, nah, I don't know. I'm going to go the other way. I'm not just like a spectator here to go to the parking lot or anything. And as he started going the other way, I think that temper that Detective Gillis has, that he's shown in the past, that ego that he has, I think he unnecessarily kind of hopped on the car. I don't think he really had to. And this big, I was dragged to the ground and then dragged by the car, I think he just fell. And then he got really mad. Once he fell, he ruined his pants. And then that's when he really didn't look too hurt because he runs over. You can start to see everything at that point. Everything was behind a bus, coincidentally, and then all of a sudden you can see it. He runs over and hits it really hard. It's like, that's probably how you hit your wrist, pal. You punched the car. And then they arrest him. Okay, so then let me think. Did anything else come out? It is a good lesson, though, to learn from this case, because you're probably going to have some sort of that exact situation in your life. What it reminded me of, and I'm not proud of this, this is not, I learned a lesson from this, is one time, legal disclaimer, this happened in Mexico. Okay, so my wife and I, we're going to do a little camping in one of our favorite mountain ranges. And it's rush hour traffic. We're trying to get out of town, and the one exit that we have to take, it's like there's a cop directing traffic, and he lets like a number of people take the exit, and then just at a certain point, then he blocks everybody and makes everybody go straight and miss the exit. Probably because they didn't want the exit to get too packed and busy. And so we're waiting in the line to take the exit, and every time, 4 or 5 times in a row, he's letting a bunch of cars take the exit we need to take, and then it's my turn, and he blocks it off and waves me forward. Oh, God. All right, so we go all the way around the block. We're stuck in traffic, the whole thing. It's a disaster, and we get all the way back, ready in the queue to take the exit. Like I said, 4 or 5 times in a row, I get sent, and it's like 35 minutes goes past, 45 minutes, we're an hour, and I'm just going around this block, and each time he's sending me. So finally, again, I'm going to take the exit. This time he stops it off and waves me to just keep going forward. Well, I stop my car and roll down my window to say, I need help. I got to take that exit, and I just keep waving, can you help me? And he just screamed at me, totally unnecessary, keep it moving. And I go, yeah, I know to keep it moving, but I need help. Can you please just tell me how I need to take that exit? Can you just please? And he's, get out of here, what are you doing? You're blocking, keep it moving. And I'm like, all right, pal, well, I'll see you later. And I just went around him, and he got furious. And so I look up in the rearview mirror, I go around him, and he's frantically trying to get out a cell phone, probably to take a picture of my license plate. He fumbles the cell phone trying to get it out and drops it. I see him in the rearview mirror, then pick it up. I floor it, and then bang a right, and I'm on my wife is going, you're an idiot, you're gonna get arrested. And I stayed up in the woods for 2 weeks just to make sure the heat died down. But I was not happy with myself after I did that. I kept thinking, man, if that cop would have fallen down, or if I would have made contact with him, or man, that could have gone really bad. So in those frustrating situations, like maybe Scotty Scheffler was in, who knows, just take a deep breath. Don't go around. Don't go, all right, later, pal, and just like go wherever you want. It might feel good in the few minutes afterwards, but as time goes on, it's like I felt that was stupid to do. Okay, so now the whole thing is feeling pretty weird, right? Because the footage that comes out doesn't really feel like assault on a police officer. They're not dropping these very serious charges. The arresting officer, Detective Gillis, has a really troubled past, so his credibility is definitely going to be in question. And then it gets to the pre-arraignment hearing, and on top of all of that, then the prosecutor comes in and makes a total fool of himself and argues for something that no one else was arguing. He was just arguing with himself. And one of his first arguments, I'm going to give it to you word for word. One of his first arguments after Scotty's lawyer said, we're not arguing that he should have to get to appear remotely. All we want is it just push back a couple weeks. That date works better for us. We weren't in here during scheduling. And so after prosecutor Mike O'Connell said something like, Judge, I've been thinking about how to say this to you. And he's taking these long pauses, and I kept having the feeling like, all right, spit it out. What are you doing? It's like he wasn't going anywhere. And he goes, Mike O'Connell, representing the Commonwealth. And then he goes, Judge, Scotty Scheffler is not a name that a lot of people would know, perhaps if they didn't follow the sport, but it's not a name that is not widely known literally around the world. And everyone kind of pauses like, what? I kind of like that. Like if you're rambling on, like if you're trying to make a point or something and you kind of lose it and you're rambling on, I think ending it with literally around the world kind of puts a stamp on it and makes it sound like it does make sense. So if you're trying to, yeah, and then I was trying to, literally around the world. Thank you. And so now, here's the options. The Louisville Police Department can accept that, all right, the footage doesn't really seem as bad as these charges. The arresting officer, he didn't go against policy. If the body camera was there, then great, it's perfect. That's why they do the body cam policy. He went against policy. I keep thinking every day they're going to drop the charges. So on top of all of that, the prosecutor is a moron. If he blew it that bad on the pre-arraignment hearing when he just could have said, yeah, that works good for us, we'll see you on June 3rd. Imagine when things actually get complicated. It really is going to be one to watch for sure. And then late last night, prosecutor Mike O'Connell scheduled, we got to be back in court tomorrow. So it's 11 right now. At 1 p.m. today, in a couple hours, they're going to be back in court. Mike O'Connell called another one. And so I'm waiting on bated breath. Are they going to drop a couple charges? Because if they went with reckless driving and disregarding signals from an officer, I think that would be fair. But adding the assault on the police, come on, criminal mischief. I don't know. It sounds like that Detective Gillis's ego got a little bruised. He was on edge. He lost his temper. But the scary thing about that is, if that just happened to you or me, and it didn't blow up into this big case, and all the eyes on it, and everyone wanted to see the footage, some poor schmuck probably would have gotten this assault on a police officer, and embellishing police charges or exaggerating even a little bit should be grounds for that police officer to be fired immediately and probably charged with a crime. Because if you're exaggerating police charges even a little bit, that's somebody's life. That could be 5 years in jail. Assault on a police officer, that could be 2 years in jail. Even a month in jail, if it's exaggerated a little bit, is completely unacceptable. And I don't know, the Louisville, how it feels right now, the Louisville Police Department looks like they might embarrass themselves with this one. And they got Mike O'Connell, the dumbest prosecutor of all time, at the helm that can't handle the big moment. It's time everybody knows who Mike O'Connell is. So, gonna watch the hearing in a couple hours. Can't wait to see what Mike O'Connell has to say this time. I'm gonna cut it off there. I'll see you next time. Why, Steven, why, Shamita.